What is up, my friends? We are back. The trio have returned. Myself, Mr. Steve Bland, and Mr. Chris Stonage together once again for another episode of the Anfield Agenda podcast. Steve, a lot has happened, sir. You wanted a performance the last time we spoke.
Oh,
well,
geez.
that didn't work out.
I was saying to you before we started recording. I was saying to you, wasn't I? The last time I was on, we were good, and it's just been a bit desperate ever since, hasn't it? So yeah, that performance that I was really desperate for, and I'm saying that we needed, we're still really desperate for, and we still really need. But back then we were getting actual results at the same time as playing badly, and now we're not doing that either. So it's all falling apart, and I can only blame myself. I do apologise.
That's okay. We were blaming you in your absence anyway, Steve, so that's perfectly fine. And Chris, how are things with you since we last spoke?
Good, mate. Good. I watched the football and just started laughing when, exactly as I predicted, the long throw in.
Don't watch the football, mate. That's
Brentford,
the worst thing
occurred. I knew we'd go 1-0 down. Just predict that every single game now. I'm grand, pal. And Keith Andrews has got a wonderful head of hair. That's all I'm going to say.
He does have a wonderful head of hair. He really does. I'll give him that one.
Yeah.
Who would have thought the manager coming out and saying publicly, lads, that we can't deal with long throw-ins and set pieces? Who would have thought that they would have targeted us in that way? It's I mean, dear. I'm not going to mince my words, Steve. I'm going to get straight into it now with the serious question. I'm not there yet, but what would it take for you to call for Arne's head this season? Or do you think that this season he deserves the entire season regardless of results?
Oh dear. I'm nowhere near there yet. Nowhere near there. And I think it'll take a good while of bad form that I don't see happening before. There are too many good players, and I think you try and you wave this magic wand over a new group with new additions. We know who we've lost in the summer. You try and wave this magic wand over this new group, and it isn't as easy as that. You can't just click your fingers, work a bit on the training field and it all happens. So I do think we have to give everyone time, not just the manager, but the new players as well. The slight other side, and I'm battling with this in my head a little bit, is I'm a little bit concerned. This is my worry, and I'll try and explain it. My worry is, were they just on a post-Klopp autopilot last year? And then this is the first year that we're seeing the impact of this manager and this coaching staff. And it's going a bit wrong. Because last year, everyone talked about this, different style, and it wasn't as rock and roll. And I didn't really see that. I saw an awful lot of the Klopp system, a lot of the way of playing was still the same last year. This year, for me, they're noticeably slower. Everything's a bit more ponderous. Defense is just looking exposed all the time. And we said this when we watched the Charity Shield, didn't we? Community Shield. The defense looks so exposed all the time, and a lot of criticism getting heaped on them, and rightly so in some respects because they're making individual errors, but they're so exposed. The fullbacks are all over the place. Kirkhead doesn't know whether he's coming or going at the moment. The two centre halves are so exposed. We haven't really got a defensive midfielder. Gravenberch is great when the ball's, when you're looking forwards and when you're on the front foot and you're attacking and stuff, but he's not defensive minded enough when you need a bit of protection. So yeah, that's my only concern. That are we seeing a new manager implementing a style that's not working now, whereas last year maybe the players were just running on autopilot?
So Chris, I guess I would agree with Steve on some points. Thought process about last season, I actually thought, I've defended Arne so much against people who said that was just Klopp's team and he got lucky and won it, because to me, I've seen a manager who was able to prevent injuries a little bit more. I thought he rotated a bit better, and I thought that helped us out. But one thing that I don't think is spoken about enough, Chris, is that this isn't a this season fall off. This is a March time onwards fall off, in my opinion, and that's what has me the most concerned. I'm a big believer in, winning being a habit, winning being something that you strive for every game, even when the league is won. So to me, I'm seeing players who are struggling to understand what the manager wants from them. And that's why, in my mind, if he doesn't win if he loses 3 of the next 4, and I kind of give Crystal Palace a pass because at the best of times that's a difficult one to navigate when you're playing a fellow Premier League side. It's kind of brinksmanship with the other manager, how strong you go. So not too fussed about that. But Aston Villa, Manchester City, Real Madrid, if he loses 2 of those 3 games, I'm going to be at a point where I'm seriously considering pushing the button as a fan. But of course, it's not my decision. But what I would say is I do think this isn't a player thing, it's a manager thing. And that's why I'm so concerned. Because yes, there are players who are underperforming, Chris, but I think they just don't understand what's being asked of them.
Yeah, it is. To be honest, last season, I did see a marked change. I do think there was a stylistic change. And I still think that it wasn't perfect last season. Like I know we can probably be revisionist and stuff, but last season we were saying a lot of the same things as we were at the start of this. Is the fact that first half performances just were really, really poor. We had to have tactical changes. We're not having those tactical tweaks aren't working this season as they were last. So that I think is on the manager. And I think I was saying that even when we won the league. But what I will say is I think what we have to understand is this guy absolutely obliterated expectations. When he came in, I was saying, if we can get top 4, happy days. Brilliant. Really, really buzzing with that. We went and won the league by a canter. This season, he's been given a lot of money. And I understand, net spend, whatever. We've actually spent less than Arsenal, but it's a lot of money and it's high profile. That the expectations of both winning the league and having that put on top has just ramped it up when actually we are in transition. However much we probably would hate to say it. And I think we just have to be patient. There has to be changes. We have to see changes. I think we have started to see changes. I think the inclusion of Jones in midfield has actually been a real positive. We've started to look a little bit more in control, but defensively, as we've said, it's been really, really poor. We're creating loads of chances. We're missing loads of chances. So I think that will come and we will start scoring more goals. But it's the fact that Brentford probably had, so many opportunities from set pieces and from, getting in front of our back 4. In terms of sacking the coach, I think we'd probably have to lose every game until Christmas for me to even consider it. And I just don't think that will happen.
So I want to touch on a point, Steve, that Chris made about the defence, because I thought it was a stark contrast between how both teams defended Brentford and how we defended. So Brentford had Collins and Sepp van den Berg, and they were celebrating every block. They were throwing their bodies on the line. They were really working to keep Liverpool out. Whereas on the other end of it, we had Ibrahim Konate strolling back when Shada was through. And it's just, I don't like the look of the way we're defending, Steve. And I get the Virgil van Dijk is a kind of languid aura type defender. But sometimes you just got to be getting dirty, mate, and getting your blocks in. And I just don't think there's enough aggression in it. But I am also of the mindset that it isn't just the back 4, because I'm a big believer in defending starting from the front as well. And that's why I'm worried about our press, because it isn't there.
This is we've talked about this in the past, and I think I raised it a few times in pods in the pre-season. We lost so much energy in the summer in Jota, Nunes, and Diaz. Say what you want about Nunes, he worked his nuts off, and he put defenders under pressure, and he pressed from the front. Same with the other 2. And Isak is fantastic. He's many things, but he's not a presser, is he? Like he isn't going to work his nuts off to close the defenders down. And you're absolutely right. It starts from the front, and they just look like some of them are going, some of them aren't. Do you remember the peak of the Klopp system when you'd have Firmino would trigger it and everybody just went because everyone knew their jobs and it all just worked so beautifully. There was no let up. We heard Arsenal fans and Arsenal players and coaches talking about like how difficult it was to play against because there were bodies everywhere and they were coming at you from all different directions. And it wasn't chaotic. It was entirely planned based on the players they had and everyone knowing their jobs. And it's just not looking like that at the moment. And the result is that you've got this defense who are making individual errors, but they, even at my basic level of football, I played a bit of centre back, and when you haven't got anyone in front of you protecting you, you're just so exposed all the time to half decent teams that know what they're doing. And it's not rocket science. And Gravenberch got loads and loads of praise, rightly so, last year. But the majority of games we were on the on the front foot. This is what I was saying earlier on. And he's great when he's looking forwards and he's got the game in front of him and he can dictate the game from that position. When he's having guys running in behind him in that gap between the midfield and the defence, you have people buzzing around his head like a couple of number 10s or wingers coming off the wings. It's a whole different ball game, and people are just realising that you can easily get at our defence, and then you layer on top of that individual mistakes. I was chatting to a guy at Sale Sharks today, a new defence coach we've got, and he was saying people have to love defending. You have to love not having the ball in rugby. The same applies to football. You have to relish not having the ball because you have to want to get it back really, really, really quickly. And you have to love that side of the game because it's not a game. Rugby's the same. It's not a game for people that only want to go one way. You have to love defending, particularly those guys in the back four. I've got to love defending, and I think, they don't. And I think, the fullbacks are a big issue for me. They're just all over the place. They don't know whether they're coming or going.
On this, sorry, Craig, to jump in, and this is where I will put it on the manager, because what I will say is our first goal on against Brentford was actually indicative of half of our problems, because it was a right back assisting the left back in the box. Realistically, defensively, we've looked so shoddy. Surely the first thing you do as a manager, and it might be just brainless thinking from me, is reduce the amount of bombing and up and down your fullbacks do. Last season we actually saw, I know it's Trent Alexander-Arnold, but he took a little bit more of a conservative role. And he was playing more from deep. And that's what actually we've seen Szoboszlai do a little bit this year as well, instead of bombing on the overlap. But because we saw last year with PSG, with their fullbacks, just absolutely incredible, Hakimi and Mendes, bombing through and being the first line of attack, let alone the second. I that's where it worries me with the coach, because surely he can see that.
What worries me is what I'm hearing from the coach and the captain.
Yeah.
I mean, contrast Slot and Van Dijk's interviews to Andy Robertson's interview after the game at the weekend. From Andy Robertson, because the next point I was going to move on to was how do we stop the rot? And I think, Steve, we've almost heard from Andy Robertson how work hard, because that is what we aren't doing. We have the talent. Nobody's going to sit here and deny that. The squad has the talent, but talent is useless unless you earn the right to use that talent by tiring teams out, by doing the hard yards, by being physical. Yeah. And that is what I'm not liking, what I'm hearing, Steve, from the captain and from the manager. Not enough looking inward and responsibility. It's more excuses for what other teams are doing.
But the working hard thing, I bet all the numbers are still right up. It's just, do you remember a few years ago when we had, go back to like the kind of the peak of your Klopp's team, we had the way it worked. You had the two centre halves, then your fullbacks were quite high, but you had Fabinho sitting in front, and then you had two, sort of the wider of the three in midfield that would drop back in Henderson, Wijnaldum, Milner, those guys would drop in. Then the fullbacks would push on, and then your wide forwards would tuck in, and Firmino would drop it, and everything kind of worked itself. It worked with each other, and it was so completely perfect in the way it was put together. This just looks like it's not. It just looks like it's just not. The organization's not there. Like they're just not organized, and I just. That's the hard work thing.
Sorry, I should probably have rephrased that somewhat, Steve. What I meant more was from a dual rate success. I don't think they're winning enough on second balls.
Yeah, I get that. They're not winning second balls at all, are they? And they're just really easy to play against. If you're analysing Liverpool at the moment as an attacking or as a head coach on another team, it's really obvious, isn't it, what you need to do? It doesn't take a rocket science to figure out how to get our back four.
So I'm wondering, did we see a solution against Frankfurt? Now, of course, Frankfurt are cannon fodder to some extent. They're not in a great moment. They've been getting beaten heavily, but we did go over there and beat them. And I have to say, Chris, take account of the opposition, but I like the balance of the 4-4-2 that we'd seen. And I wonder, has Arne found somewhat of a solution there that he should run with, at least to form some solidity at the minute, and maybe put two holding midfielders, or what we could class as holding midfielders from what we have available in front of that back four?
Yeah, I think that's a sort of a part of a solution that we'd already suggested, I think, previously. I thought, as I said earlier, I thought Jones, since he's come back into the team, has probably been the best player, even though the results haven't really gone the right way. And having someone like him added in there did give that a bit of extra solidity. But yeah, I'm almost not certain it's a formation thing. As Steve said, it's because we've got so many new cogs in the machine. I don't think half of them know how the other ones work. Even last season when we only added Chiesa, everyone sort of seemed to know their role.
Yeah.
Do we though?
It's
Sorry to
difficult.
push back,
Go
but
on.
do we have that many new cogs? Like, if we're talking about
Yeah.
starting 11, how many? We've got 2 new fullbacks. Outside of that, a centre forward.
And Wirtz as well.
If he
And-
plays, yeah, to some extent. But I don't know. I struggle to see the change thing outside of the fullbacks, to be honest, as there's been too many new cogs.
We've had about, I reckon we've had more formations in the first 10 games of this season than we had in the whole of last. He's searching for it, isn't he? Like he isn't sure what his best team is. He isn't sure how to. It's almost like they've bought him all these new toys, and he's not quite sure how the jigsaw fits together.
Is that not worrying in itself, though, Steve? Because you
No,
would have thought that when you go out with your shopping list, you're like, "Well, I need this position filled for this for this."
Yeah, but that's kind of how it started the season, isn't it? We started off with the players that we bought in what we, as the fans, would think are probably their best positions. We started off with Gakpo right one side, wide one side, Salah wide the other side. You know, Ekitike or Isak, whoever up top, Wirtz in this number 10. Now we're kind of messing around with 2 holding midfielders or 4-4-2. We're playing 2 up front, and I don't know. It just feels like we're just like scratching around trying to figure out, a way of getting these new toys into a system.
There is one thing, Chris, that Steve said that I can't deny, and it was about Darwin and Diaz, and that we are missing that chaotic nature of both of those. And I mean that in a positive sense, with what a handful they were for opposition teams. I mean, Cody Gakpo, for all his strengths, and there are many, especially goal scoring, he chips in with his fair share. We're lacking a bit of dynamism, I think. And I would have liked to have seen that from Rio, but I also understand that Rio needs to be managed and gradually eased in. But then we've left ourselves short. This is the dichotomy, and this is the argument I'm having in my own head. Obviously, understandably, Rio takes time to settle in. But then again, we haven't brought anybody in because we didn't want to block that pathway. So in the short term, we're kind of screwing ourselves.
That's what we were talking about last week in terms of the skill set of Semenyo. When you look at a player that we sort of don't actually have, it is that player who can take a player on and beat a man. We don't actually have that anymore. I mean, I think Salah was that. I don't think he's quite got the pace anymore to do that. He maybe needs to adjust his game. I think Ekitike could be that, but I think it would be really underutilizing his strengths. His strengths are with the ball to feet and running in behind. I think he's unbelievable at that. So, yeah, that's it is sort of a as you say, a dynamism thing and becoming unpredictable again, because I think we are quite predictable in the way that we move forward. I think Wirtz can add that as well in a different sort of way, but at the moment it's not clicking.
So, looking to tomorrow night, gents, Crystal Palace and Anfield League Cup. At the best of times, Steve, I struggle to figure out how strong a manager should go when they're playing fellow Premier League opposition, because it's almost like a game of chess, isn't it? How strong does the other manager go? How strong do you go? We are expecting a lot of changes. We know that Freddie Woodman is going to stay in goal. We think maybe Calvin Ramsey could be coming in at right back based off 3 years, by the way. 3 years. Centre backs in my head, I'm thinking Gomez and Endo, but other than that, I don't really know.
At this rate, it'll be you and Steve.
Is a free hit tomorrow night. I almost feel this is a free hit for Arne, and I think this is where I'm interested to see if he plays Wirtz because he thinks he needs minutes and rhythm. Salah, similarly, where normally I'd be like, don't put Salah near this game, League Cup game, keep him away. But I'm intrigued, Steve, to see what way he goes with the team selection. How many youthful players versus how many here and now players?
I mean, just on Wirtz, there's a whole podcast probably on that, isn't there? I think like stop dicking about with him. Just get him in there and say, right, you're gonna play number 10, what we bought you to play, like for the next 10 games, and we're gonna work it around you. We're gonna make it work. Because at the moment, he doesn't know where he's, he's playing right one week, he's playing left the next, he's playing, he was one of a midfield too at one point, wasn't he? He was a couple of games ago against United. Like just get the guy where he's been unbelievable for Germany and Leverkusen and just let him play, work everything else around him because he's that good. I actually don't agree it's a free hit. I think it's a kind of a free hit if you're motoring in the league and you're winning in the Champions League and everything's going well. League Cup games are like, oh great, what a chance to play a few kids and get a few minutes into a few older boys. And if you lose, who really cares? It doesn't really matter. We lost last year to Plymouth, didn't we, in the FA Cup, and everyone went, oh, who cares? We're doing well in the Champions League. We're doing well in the league. Like, it doesn't really matter. All of a sudden, if you play a weakened team and it's another loss, it's all of a sudden, what is it, 6 games out of 7 then? 7 games out of 8, whatever it is, and that adds to the picture, doesn't it? And I think you said earlier, winning breeds winning. Like, get another win. I'd be going strong. I'd be going fairly strong and trying to win because I think the players need it.
What about yourself, Chris? What if you were to have a stab at an 11 right now, tomorrow? What would you be looking to do?
My 11 and Arne Slot's 11 are 2 very different things, I think. I do think he will rotate, rightly or wrongly. I also think Oliver Glasner will rotate a lot because they've obviously lost their first game in the Conference League. It's really important for them to get back into form. I think they've lost their last 3 actually, Palace, or not one in the last 3 anyway. So they're not exactly in amazing form, but they always seem to save it for us. I'd probably say we'll go Woodman in goal, Gomez right back, maybe Bradley right back. Honestly, I can't really pick
There
it.
you go, Bradley right back though. What if he picks up an injury, then we've no right back?
Exactly. It might be it has to be Calvin Ramsey, but it's like, my goodness me, how exactly? We haven't spoken about him. I mean, I remember
3 years. 3 years.
I remember when it was me, you, and Paddy talking about signing Calvin Ramsey for the future. I've lost 2.5 stone since then, and probably lost all of my money.
I'd like to say me too, but
right, exactly. Like that shit. That ship had surely sailed about a year ago. But here we go, Calvin Ramsey, you can play. Neoni maybe playing in midfield. Honestly, I couldn't pick an 11. If it were me,
we're only short of a Reece Williams in here, lads, aren't we? Let's be honest.
Should we just recall Nat Phillips, even though we sold him?
Wasn't Reece Williams on the bench for the last Carabao Cup game?
I think so. He's certainly still a Liverpool player.
I mean, you wouldn't be surprised. You wouldn't be surprised, would you?
I would like.
I wouldn't be surprised if he comes in, does semi-decent, and people are wanting him, giving him a 4-year deal, and Canade sold.
Yeah.
I would like to see Ngamoa play. And Ngamoa and Chiesa both given starts. Apart from that, honestly, you couldn't pick an 11. I struggled to pick a 7 out of the 11. To be honest, it's going to be really heavily rotated because Villa's, I mean, equally as huge, if not, well, obviously bigger.
You'd like McAllister to get a few minutes too, wouldn't you? I think he looks like a lad who needs rhythm, needs minutes, because he's been really poor this season for me. Like, we're past the point where we're saying he needs a preseason and all that stuff. He's had enough games to get into a rhythm now, I think, and he needs to start showing.
I agree. It's a tricky one. I think, Steve, if I'm being really honest, the reason I said it's a bit of a free hit is almost I don't want to add more pressure. But deep down, I kind of agree with what you said, and I did reference before winning is a habit.
Yeah.
I guess I just don't want to add that pressure onto the manager's shoulders. But one question I would like to ask both of you gents on the defences, and I'll start with yourself, Chris. Do you think Arne knows his best back four yet?
Do you?
I don't think he even knows what to do with Jeremy Frimpong yet, let alone what his best back four is. I don't think he knows where Frimpong should be playing.
I could honestly, I couldn't tell you our best back four, to be honest. I like, if you'd have asked me at the start of the season, I would have been all right with Robertson being sold. Whereas now, I think he's going to be pretty crucial. Which I mean, it's sort of a complete 180 on what we were all thinking at the start of the season, was that, Kirk is going to come in, but he's looked chaotic and doesn't really know where he's going. Right back, Frimpong's been injured half the time and also doesn't look very comfortable there and been played at right wing. Bradley is a walking yellow card. And
What's Kirkes? If Bradley's a walk-in yellow, what's Kirkes?
Well, exactly.
On the opposite side.
It's almost like at the moment, and to our detriment, our best right back is as a central midfielder.
Our best central midfielder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, like, if we can't tell you, I almost certainly say Arne can't tell you, because I think if you went and asked, 100 Liverpool fans, we'd see 7, 8, 9 different answers to that question.
It is crazy to see the revisionism, because Chris was right. Last season, every single one of us, to a man, woman, and child, was saying Andy Robertson needs competition, Andy Robertson needs upgrading, and now here we are begging for him to be back in.
Yeah, but it's funny, this, isn't it? Because Kirkes has. I raised this in the first couple of games, didn't I? We were talking about Kirkes and Robertson. I think he's going to be a phenomenal footballer. He is. He's got loads of great attributes, but positionally, I just don't know where he's going sometimes. Like, he doesn't know. It looks like he's kind of caught between this. Do I go? Am I supposed to be bombing on, or am I supposed to be sitting back? Am I not really sure like what he's doing? I'm pretty sure he started every Premier League game, hasn't he, so far?
I think Arne referenced that last week in saying, Premier League games have been Kirkes.
So it tells you that he's his guy. We know 3 of the best. What Arne would say is his best back four, don't we? It's just we don't really know when it comes to the crunch who he's playing at right back. If it's the FA Cup final tomorrow, or if it's a Man City at home tomorrow and everyone's fit. And Frimpong, I don't really know. We're not quite sure yet, are we? Like, whether he's a footballer or a cheerleader. We see as much of him on social media doing the cheerleading as we do the actual football. So, there's a definite jury out on the fullback, recruitment, I would say.
With Kirkes, do you think I think personally, and this is my theory on it, I think him and Gakpo are pretty incompatible. I think if you put
he gets annoyed that Gakpo doesn't use him when he does make those runs around the outside or on the inside.
Yeah, I honestly think if you put Kirkes with Diaz, I think it'd be a different story. And I'm not saying, why did we sell Diaz? Because it was obvious why we sold Diaz. He didn't want to be here. But him and Gakpo, it just doesn't seem to work. I don't know. Even in the games we were winning, I just don't think that relationship has clicked yet. And I don't know whether it will.
So I want to tie this conversation together, Steve, and kind of skip down the agenda a little bit to the point where I ask, looking back on our summer transfer business now, any revisionism, anything you would have done differently, other than, of course, the centre back, maybe that we had that conversation, but is there any buyer's remorse that you're feeling?
I mean, I'm not. If you listen back to podcasts that we did around the summer, I wasn't cock a hoop about the business that we did. I was giving us a 6 or 7 out of 10, and I think Isak took it up to a 7 or an 8 out of 10. I didn't feel like and I said this in the summer, I didn't feel like we adequately replaced the energy that those guys brought. We know what happened to Diogo Jota, and we didn't, in a footballing sense, or probably in every other sense, we haven't replaced that personality, all that footballer. We haven't. So it's not Captain Hindsight here. I had concerns about the business that we did. I don't feel like we recruited as well as everyone made out because of that energy and effort and pressing that we lost.
For me, Chris, if I'm being honest about it, it's probably Frimpong, not because I don't rate him as a player. I think if we were playing with a right wing back, he'd have been tailor-made for it. But I'm looking at Bradley and we're still unsure. So then we bring in Frimpong, and I really don't know if he's a right back or a right winger in Arne's mind. So, it's still too early, jury's out. I do think Kirkes will come good over time. I absolutely believe he will. No doubts about Wirtz, Ekitike, Isak, none of that. It's just maybe Frimpong for me, but even at that, I could be being unfair.
Yeah, I think the sad, unfortunate reality of it is actually I think what we had to do is maybe buy a window ahead of what we actually wanted to do, because of the unfortunate stuff of Diogo. I think the whole of this summer has been about replacing Salah in 2 years. That's what the whole of this summer has been about when it comes to the attacking players and trying to get them in. Having them work with Salah, it doesn't really, it hasn't been conducive to good results. We haven't seen the best of Salah. We haven't seen the best of Isak when he's played. It's been like we've almost had 2 windows in one where we're, as I said earlier, the changes haven't been conducive to supporting each other. I don't have any regrets about any of the players that we brought in. I do think that obviously the centre half, Mark Gay, that could have happened in another universe. So I'm not blaming the owners for that. I do agree with you though that whether it's this summer, whether it's in January, whether it's in the summer, we need to add a little bit more pace in our attacking lineup. But apart from
energy,
that,
isn't it? Energy and dynamism,
yeah.
like you said before, Chris. Like just energy. Like we look like we just got no energy this year. Whereas last year, and going back obviously into the Klopp years, like we could be accused of many things, but having no energy was not one of them.
So yeah, I still think we've had a brilliant summer, and I still think we brought in some incredible players, and I think they will come good. But they haven't been fit together well yet, and I think that's both down to Father Time now. We need time to pass, and we also need the manager to find out a way to ease them in better.
So here's a phrase I'm probably never going to utter again, but Troy Deeney made a good point. And it got me thinking. And again, I probably will never say that sentence again. But he said something, Steve, and I don't want to use the word ego because I don't think that's fair. But he talked about Salah being the guy, Isak being the guy, Wirtz being the guy, Ekitike being the guy, and then all these guys want to be the guy at Liverpool. Is that perhaps maybe causing a little bit of concern? Because as much as we theoretically know we need to start, as Chris touched on, replacing Salah down the line, when is that? When do you start that phasing out process? And is it a battle of wills or egos at this point?
I think there have been plenty of successful teams over the years where they've had 4 or 5 guys wanting to be the guy. I don't think we were blessed, weren't we, with the Firmino, Mane, and Salah. They were quite Mane and Firmino were quite happy to let Mo Salah be the guy, and then the midfield was just a hardworking kind of energetic midfield, quite happy for him to be the guy. And probably agree. We have got a number of lads now who want to be the main man, but I don't think that's a bad thing. You want the manager to embrace that, and I would hope that they'd done their homework on the kind of characters they were buying to know that they were, that even if they felt that way, they were good workers, they were good people, and good in the dressing room. And I have no reason to think that's not the case. I think Ekitike is a perfect example that he's probably had his nose put very slightly out of joint by all the chopping and changing, because I think he's, to his credit, he's fast becoming undroppable, isn't he? He's not far off first name on team sheet territory for him at the moment, and that's obviously a bit of a challenge as well for the manager. So look, this is why you go out and you try and get a good manager, and you pay a good manager a lot of money, and you going back to the very first conversation this evening, we've got to give him and them a little bit of time to get this right.
I would say
one of the
go ahead.
Well, just one of the concerns to kind of counter my own argument is when he's gone back to the lads who played last year, they've still not played very well, have they? So but I think we do have to give them a little bit of time.
So what I would say, Chris, is if I'm John W. Henry and co now, I'm certainly slow playing the contract extension that's under negotiation for Arne at the minute. I'm not rushing into that one as quickly. And also, I wanted to talk about Salah for a second, because there's always a scapegoat. There's always a scapegoat in fandom when things aren't going well, whether it's Jordan Henderson, whether it's Adam Lallana, there's always a scapegoat. And I wanted to ask the question, is the criticism that Mohamed Salah is receiving fair, or is it because himself and Virgil are the standard bearers, and when things aren't going well, they rightly get the praise? When things are going wrong, people often look to them to think, you're supposed to be the guys to grab this by the scruff of the neck. What's going on?
Yeah, I think criticism is fair, abuse is not, I think would be the phrase I would use.
But
I
they
think
are conflated quite a bit online. But any criticism these days, in any way, people are very
Exactly.
quick to play the abuse card. Which, to be fair, I think a lot of people are just unhappy. There are always idiots, and I'm critical a lot. But this get out of my club stuff is nonsense. But I do think criticism is fair.
I think you have to be able to understand that when you are, put on this pedestal and you've achieved as you've achieved and set the standards you have, when the standards drop, you are going to face backlash because it's like, well, you've done this before. Why aren't you doing it now? I think Mohamed Salah, especially because he has completely delivered, especially last season, you don't just lose that. You don't. I do think there's a lot of conflating factors, but I think one of them is I do think he's been particularly selfish this season. And potentially that will be to do with the fact that he is aware of the fact that they are going to replace him. Whether it be with one, whether it be with three players, they are going to replace him. However, what I will say is I find it astonishing how quickly people do turn, and how it becomes really genuinely crazy, because I've seen so much over the last few days of just idiocy of the critique of Mo Salah, like people just making compilations of him and stuff, when actually I could provide you 250, 260 reasons why he's an incredible asset. I do think he's got to improve, and I do think that he's got to become less selfish, especially in a time where he's in poor form. But he just proved, even the other night, yeah, he can pull something out of nothing. He can still do that.
The social media stuff, Steve, particularly wound me up. I can't lie, mate. Of all the other stuff, and I can completely understand if Mo's feeling hurt. I totally can understand that. If he's looking online and he's seen stuff and he's thinking, hang on a minute. But just address that publicly, because what we've seen with Mohamed Salah in the past is when he speaks, fans listen. And when he wanted his new contract, he did an interview, fans were quickly behind him. So that was the one part, Steve, that I would say is a black mark against him for me.
Yeah, it's a funny one, this, isn't it? Because we had this conversation, didn't we, after the first 2 or 3 games? I think you posed a question like, "Is it a concern?" And I said, "Absolutely not. No issue." I'm definitely sort of not as adamant on that now, and I'm not saying for a second that we're over the hill and we're seeing the decline of Mo Salah, because we've all watched him long enough to know that he can, even in the seasons where he's banned in 40 or 50, he has some pretty extraordinarily selfish moments, or moments where he'll mess up an easy chance, or he's done nothing for 90 minutes and he'll bang one in. So the only difference is now he's not doing the bang it in the 90th minute kind of bit. I just think all he needs is a couple of goals. He needs a couple of goals. He's a confidence boy, isn't he? He'll go on a massive run. I'm clinging to this. Couple of goals, big long run, and we'll all be happy. He has got an issue, hasn't he, there? Because we come back to the Ekitike thing and the Isak thing. We've done 125 million quid on Alexander Isak, who let's face it, when fit, you'd be a brave manager to say, I'm going to leave my guy that the owners have spent all this money on the bench. So he has got an issue in that at the moment he's probably the guy who, as in Frankfurt, misses out if there's a formation tweak to fit the 2 centre forwards in. He's probably your guy to miss out. So he's got to get back to proving that he is that guy.
It'll be very interesting, Chris, to see if our form picks up when he's at the AFCON. If Arne finds a balance with let's say, Isak, Ekitike, Gakpo, something along those lines, what happens then when he comes back if the form picks up?
Yeah, I mean, you can't change a winning team. So if that situation occurs, I fully think I don't think Arne Slot's weak enough, because that's one thing I will say about him. He is not weak mentally. He's very, very strong. Sometimes probably too strong and too stubborn to what he believes in. That's one thing that I don't think would happen. I think he would leave him out. I've got full confidence in that.
So just before we finish up, gents, and we're kind of jumping a little bit ahead here, but we've got Villa, Madrid, City coming up after Crystal Palace.
Oh, geez.
What do you think happens over these next couple of weeks before the international break? I mean, Villa at home, Madrid at home, and then Manchester City away to go to the international break. So, Steve, what are you expecting to see?
I was chatting to a City fan today, actually, and he was bemoaning the fact that they've been terrible this season as well. So I don't think, we're only a point behind them, aren't we? And who would have thought, I'd be looking at the 2 Premier League games as absolutely must win or must not lose. 4 points, absolute bare minimum, and then the Champions League, I don't know. I don't know. It sometimes brings out something a bit different, doesn't it? Like the Frankfurt game was completely different to what we've seen either side of it, really. And, I could easily see us turning over Real Madrid at home, no problem at all. It's City and Villa, I think. Yeah, 4 points. Ideally, a City win of the 2. But yeah, they don't fill me with a great deal of confidence, those games.
You can look at them either way, Chris, can't you? You can look at them and think these are 3 games to get up for, or 3 games that should hopefully get the crowd up, get people involved, or you can look at it and think that these are 3 daunting fixtures coming up against 3 pretty good sides. And I agree with Stephen that I'd be focused more on Villa and City, because you want to be really bad not to get through the league format of the Champions League the way it is. Like, even just a limp through, you'd want to be pretty bad. So, I think we'll do that. So I'm with Steve. I think 4 points from those 2 games.
If we do you think, I'm just going to say this before I get into my point, do you think we can win the league?
No, God, no.
Well, that
I think we don't even. It would be unfair of us to even have the conversation where we currently sit. I think
I don't know. I think if you
think, Steve, you think we can win the league?
Well, we can, absolutely, we can.
So if we've got title winning aspirations, we have to win both of these games. Like, I think absolutely have to, in order to have somewhat of a semblance of a chase to Arsenal, because I don't see them losing any games in the next few weeks.
They've had 1 shot on target conceded in October in the league. One shot on target.
They're so good. They're so good, and they've built a team over time, and that's what happens. I would personally, I don't think we can win the league. I think Arsenal are too good. I will take 4 points from those 2 games. Champions League, I don't care, to be honest. Like, I as long as we don't get battered and we maybe get a point out of it, I think we've got enough to get through that league phase. But those 2 games, 4 points is an absolute must, especially Villa at home. We have to win.
Yeah, it's a really tough one to look at with the league, Steve, because it's not that I don't think we can win it. I just don't think we've any right to sit here and talk about it now with what we've seen, going from 5 points clear of Arsenal to 7 points behind in a month.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a tall order. I hate Arsenal. I hate Arsenal fans. I hate the way they play. I hate that they've got a really good defense as well. It really, really, really winds me up, because it's really good. And I don't, individually, you're not picking some of them over some of ours, but they've worked out a system, haven't they? Where Zubimendi and Declan Rice just work so hard in front of them to protect them. And that's what we haven't got at the moment.
Yeah. And they built a squad amazingly well as well. That's one thing I will say. They haven't sold. Like, they've really backed Arteta to the hill, but I think they will be proven right in the end.
But if you drop those 2 centre midfielders into our team, I reckon it's different.
Oh, what could have been, gents? What could have been? Look, we will see what happens against Crystal Palace tomorrow night. Huge thank you to Chris and Steve for joining me. It's difficult to have these conversations. It's far better when we're all optimistic, we're upbeat, and fingers crossed we can start getting back to winning ways. But, gentlemen, appreciate your time as always. Everybody watching, thank you. Do let us know your thoughts if you're watching this on YouTube in the comment section, and we will catch up with you, hopefully, after a victory over Crystal Palace. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.